What's up, folks? And welcome to another episode of Healthy Living and Wine. I'm your host, JQue. This podcast explores intentional living through real conversations that challenge us, stretch us, and invite us to think more deeply about how we care for our mind, our bodies, our relationships, and yes, also how we engage with wine in balance and moderation. Now, today's conversation sits right in the intersection of culture and consciousness. Vulnerability used to feel sacred. It lived in private conversations, trusted friendships, quiet healing spaces, but now vulnerability trends, right? It circulates, it builds platforms, it also creates followers. And that shift, it kind of raises an honest question. When healing becomes public, when pain becomes content, when growth becomes part of your brand, are we empowering ourselves or are we participating in something more transactional? That's right. I believe there's a difference between sharing from a scar and sharing from an open wound. And there is a difference between guarding your heart and guarding your image. Well, wine is kind of a quiet way. It teaches us something similar to that, right? Not every bottle is open in the moment that it's purchased. Some things require time. Some things require the right environment, and some things deserve to be matured before they're ever even poured. So today's conversation, we're exploring the tension between preservation and performance, between emotional gatekeeping and emotional entrepreneurship. This episode is brought to you by Cote de Femme, reminding us to live extra, and Body Loving Skincare, loving the skin I'm in. I'm so grateful for all the partners who align thoughtful living and responsible wine culture. Be sure to check them out, the show notes, to learn more about today's sponsors and how they support the healthy living and wine community. Now, without any further ado, I want you to go ahead, grab your glass, and whether you are sipping on something bold, something smooth, or just participating in the conversation, get settled in. And here's what I want you to think about. Have you ever shared something before it was fully ready? Maybe because it felt like you were expected to share it. Or on the other end, have you ever held on to something so tightly that it never had room to breathe? Yeah, sit with that. And remember to like, share, comment. I love hearing your feedback and keeping the conversation going. So let's get into it. Folks, I am really excited about who's going to be sitting at the table with me today. I'm welcoming someone to the platform who I've known for over a decade, you guys. My friend D, my sister D, my queen D, and I have walked through so many seasons: health, fitness, entrepreneurship, motherhood, growth, stress, all of it. And we've evolved together in real time. We've seen each other pivot, stretch, mature, and even sharpen. So this isn't just a guest. This is someone who understands the layers of living well. And I'm not talking about from theory, but I'm talking about from lived experiences. And of course, while we don't do resumes here, what I will say is that Dee brings a wisdom, a discernment, a depth to the space she enters. And on a topic like today, this one, perspective matters. So everybody, I'm excited to bring to the table my friend Dee. Hey, Dee.
Hey, Queen. Hey, JQue. Oh my goodness. I just love you. I just
Oh,
want to say
girl,
that. I just
you
love
know
you.
how much I love you. Well, I'm really glad you're here, Dee, because you have so much insight and wisdom when it comes to, first of all, emotional discernment, and then entrepreneurship, and then emotions, period, because you and I have lived through some super sensitive emotional things together and separate, right?
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So now, instead of listing your credentials, I want to start with something that reveals just a little bit about you, right? Here's your question.
Okay.
When was the last time you intentionally chose not to share something personal? And not because you were hiding, but because you recognized that it wasn't something that was ready to be consumed by the public.
Mm, we didn't get questions beforehand, guys.
I know, on
Oh,
purpose.
trying to think. So it's interesting because of the season that I'm in. So when you met me, I had little people. And now I have adults and almost adults and teenagers. And so with them, they were in front and center all the time. And now it's really dependent on them. Like I don't share all the little things about my kids like I used to. Even like the first day of school, I don't share that anymore. So I would say with my girls, I'm really, really discerning in that. And I'm really protective of that information, what I share and what I keep quiet. For myself personally, you know, what you see is what you get for the most part.
Okay.
I'm pretty authentic. I would say there's certain things that I wouldn't yell out in the middle of the street, and I'm not going to yell that in the middle of social media. But for the most part, what you see is what you get with me. But when it comes to my children, I'm definitely their privacy is utmost important to me.
You know, it's really cool how you can make the distinction between hiding and preserving, right? And this is kind of where this conversation lives. We're in a time where vulnerability, it moves really fast. I mean, stories circulate quickly, healing journeys are documented publicly and often super immediately. Now, I mean, I just experienced the death of a friend, and how I find out about it was on Facebook, right? So now nothing vulnerable happens, you know, by keepsake. People are purposely using the platform.
Yeah.
At what point did vulnerability really stop becoming sacred and start becoming more strategic?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this lately, actually, because like you said, it's almost the tagline, it's almost the clickbait, right? That people are using. And I've been seeing it in the wellness space. I've been seeing it in ministry, which is where I occupy space. And honestly, like sometimes myself too, like if I'm crying, I'm like, should I turn on the camera and let people know why I'm crying, right? And it really is, for me, if it's an authentic space and place where I feel led to share what's bringing the emotion, then I'm going to turn it on. If it's something that, like I said, I wouldn't yell in the middle of the street, I'm not going to put it on social media because I feel like people feel like there's a veil there because there's a camera, and that they have control over it. But emotional entrepreneurship, which is this new genre, is when someone's using their emotions like currency. And that's not what emotions are for, right? It's not a transaction. It's not for manipulation. And it's not always intentionally. So
Yeah.
when your emotions become the way you secure connections or safety or validation, or if you get attention, that's when you really need to check your heart of where your motives are coming from.
Yeah, I really think the same thing. I mean, because what you said opens up to something even bigger. Vulnerability has definitely shifted. And we have to examine the environment on how it shifted, right? We're not just talking about people sharing anymore. Now we're talking about how the culture rewards that visibility, that vulnerability, right?
Right.
We're living in a time where many researchers call visibility economy. Attention has value. Engagement has value. Transparency builds relatability. Relatability builds trust. And of course, trust is what helps you build your influence, right?
Right.
So according to the recent market data, audiences are more likely to follow, engage, and purchase from creators who share personal struggles and emotional journeys. This is a 58% data from the marketing research data says that vulnerability builds connections faster than perfection ever did. And so this is changing our landscape. Like you said before, it's kind of like strategic capital.
Yeah.
Nobody's discerning. People now are taking that vulnerability, those struggles, those transformational things, and they're generating higher engagement, higher educational content.
Yeah.
Do you really feel like it's authentic, or is it more empowering, or is it more really just capital?
I think when they're oversharing too fast and they're retelling the same painful story over and over again and basically emotional dumping on people, just to prove how much someone's hurting or something's hurting them in order to be taken seriously, then it's definitely capital. But I was kind of smiling when you said this because you know my story, and I started with that before the trend. I was before the trend. And I honestly, at the time, it's because I was a stay-at-home mom of two little girls who could care less about what I was going through. And I did want to be seen, and I did want to be heard, and people related to my story because I was so real. I remember somebody saying, I would never post a picture of me all sweaty and nasty after a workout, but like when you do it, I'm like, oh, well, Dee did it. And so it was to be relatable, but it was also for me to be seen. But I never thought of it to manipulate, like, oh, if I do this, I'll get more likes or I'll get more followers. It was never that intention. So I think, like everything, heart posture. But now when that's a strategy that social media managers are capitalizing on, that if you really see how much you're hurting, then they'll stay or they'll like you or you'll grow. And not coming from a place of understanding where the pain is, it could be really harmful for both the audience and the person. And the truth is, a lot of people, they learn that the only way that they're cared for is if they're in crisis when they're doing this. And so when you're using your emotions for strategy or manipulation, it becomes a language of survival versus an opportunity for people to actually have compassion for one another and have empathy for one another. And that's kind of a little scary territory, I would say, that our culture is definitely going towards.
You know what? I feel you kind of like that. And I also feel like people are under pressure as well to heal publicly, right? Nothing is silent anymore. I also kind of feel like when people are in this environment and they're being real, are they being measured by their healing, or are they being measured by their authenticity? Because you could choose to do it in private. So many people now are choosing to do it publicly. I'm not even just talking about the authenticity of the actual healing, but the actual process, the actual execution of healing, all the way down to, recording therapy sessions, showcasing me going, audio recordings of what we talked about in therapy, or all the different things, showing lists of what your therapist said are a part of the healing. And not even just therapy, but even books now, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of feel that we're, even because now it's a performance or an expectation for us to do it, we're losing the authenticity of what the healing process really is, right?
Absolutely. And it's not authentic. It's, like you said, performance. It's a strategy that they're using. And I think we're living in a world where what you see isn't what you get, especially with this AI generated world. And so I feel like that's just another level of it. If people are staging their therapy sessions, if they are we keep saying capitalizing, but if they're using their therapy notes to get more attention, it's not authentic. Like it isn't. It's staged. It's almost like reality TV, right? We're a little bit, well, we're not old, but when reality TV first started, there was some real stuff being recorded. There's some really great reality TV actors that are recording what looks like real TV, and that's what's happening. Reality is no longer becoming reality. It's becoming staged. It's becoming an opportunity for someone to show that they are a great actress or actor. And for the healing process, it also makes it for somebody who's actually going through it, and it might not look like what this person who has a lot of followers go through, question if their healing is real or if they're actually doing the right steps to heal. And I mean, I'm seeing like marriages dissolve and, like crazy stuff people are putting out there. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, did you really put that voicemail that they left you or the text message thread? Like, they're putting it all out there.
Yes.
Almost to the point too that they're antagonizing people too, to make it even more salacious for them to have even more content so that they keep capitalizing it. And I mean, we know they have TikTok whole videos of like things gone wrong, right? Really wrong. And it makes us question too their authenticity, if it's coming from a real space, if this is something completely staged. And now people are like, well, let me show you receipts, right? And even receipts have to be created. And it's just, it's out of control. I honestly think it is. And it started off very innocent, and I could see, like, for me, started off very innocent. But when you start posting your healing journey with the intention of someone getting your notice so that they'll like you or engage with you or follow you, that's when you cross the line. And so that's when you are looking at yourself like, is this something that, and also you can only pull that story for so long. When someone's always in a crisis or always in a dramatic scenario, it's like, man, either they have a really hard life or they have a really great imagination.
Yeah, I feel kind of, I guess I feel kind of lopsided about it, because we've created an environment where being real is measured by how much you disclose, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if someone chooses privacy, then they risk seeming guarded or disconnected.
Yeah.
Somehow we have normalized healing without documentation. How do we get back to, understanding that healing does not have to be public? We don't have to put every aspect of it on social media. But at the same time, after I did research on here, there are some therapeutic treatments that suggest to clients that they share their healing journey, share their healing process. There have even been therapists that, I've talked to, that's a part of their prescription to their client, to find a public platform that they feel comfortable sharing on, because it then holds the then it holds the person that is sharing accountable.
Yeah.
Right? A form of accountability.
Yeah.
I kind of feel mixed about that. I guess to some level, I feel that sharing, but for me, in the actual thick of it, during the actual healing journey, it would be hard for me to share personally. But afterwards, there have been times I have shared my testimony after I've been through it, vulnerable and all. But during the actual healing process, it was just really hard for me to share.
I agree. If it's authentic healing, if you're actually going through the healing process and you're not staging the healing process, I honestly think just from emotional regulation in your nervous system, you're not able to share. You don't have the capacity to do that because you're actually processing everything that you're going through. But the power of the testimony is major, and I truly believe in the power of the testimony because it could help somebody else who's going through it set free. Now, I haven't done any research, and I didn't know that therapists are encouraging their clients to share their journeys. I just really question how healthy that is. But again, out of my scope of practice for the client, like looking back, because if you're in the middle of this place and space where you're just surviving, right? You're just trying to get through it. And then you go onto the other side and you heal and you look back, would you still make that same decision if you weren't in survival mode? If you were in the mode that you were in? So it's one of those things, if a therapist is encouraging them while they're in the process of the healing, and then they come on the other side and they're like, I can't believe I put that out there, right? Yeah, so that kind of makes me question the therapist as well. And we know now there's a lot of social media therapists, so you just need to look like you're doing it. And so that would definitely make me question their credentials for sure.
Yeah, I think the same thing, but I've also noticed something. I noticed that what they're asking to share, there's a difference between storytelling, again, after you settled it in your spirit, versus telling while you're still bleeding in it. And psychologists often talk about the difference between processing trauma and living trauma. One builds the integration, and the other it reinforces de-stress. So here's the question, I guess, between public sharing or not, or when and where. How can someone really tell the difference between sharing a scar or sharing an opened wound?
How can the person on the other side, not the person sharing, but on the other side,
the person sharing, but
receiving.
Consumer, I'm going to your page, and how? And I guess that's really the part that is the authenticity, or if it's the storytelling, or if it's the showcasing. When the consumer is actually consuming the content, are they noticing it's from an open wound, Or are they noticing it from the scar? It's already happened. Now you're past it and it's actually healing. Or do we get more of the engagement? Is the consumer more ready to consume while the wound is open?
I honestly think we live in a train wreck society.
Me too. The
I
world is
was
a
just
train
driving
wreck.
yesterday.
Cheers, girl. Take a moment for that. Cheers to the train wreck world.
Seriously, I was driving yesterday. There was a car accident. It was nothing. And there was so much traffic because people were this way. And I'm like, are you
Nosy.
kidding me? Like, people want to see the guts and gore. They want to see people hurting. And at this point, scripted television isn't enough. So now we are having this reality moments. We don't even watch TV anymore, right? We watch social media platforms for our entertainment. And so we're using people's tragedies, people's stories, their open wounds for our own engagement. And unfortunately, I think that's when people really want to consume. I feel like it's evolved. It was at a place of like overcoming. Once they overcome, let's look back at the before picture now that they're at the after story. But now I definitely think we want to be in the story. We want to be from beginning to end part of it. And I'm not talking about we, me, but like as a society, we want to be part of that story while it's happening, and either cheering them on or not. That's totally depending on the person's perspective.
Yeah, I think that's too. I feel like just what you said is so valuable. We want to literally be cheering them on, or so if I'm looking at it in real time, just based on what we have been discussing and conversating about here, what I'm getting so far is that I really don't think it's vulnerability that's the actual issue.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's the timing. It's the motivation behind it. Is the environment the issue? I mean, in a culture that rewards exposure, we want to see everything. They want to know everything. Just like you said, the car accident happened. It's not bad, but we're almost about to have another car accident, trying to see what the heck is going on with someone else, right?
Right.
When the culture right now, it rewards exposure, I think that discernment becomes part of healthy living.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I feel like it's not even something. Some people are born with that discernment level, right? But I also think it's part of the skill. And if overexposure right now is on extreme, then learning when and where, that emotional gatekeeping sits on the other side.
Yeah.
And sometimes it looks strong. Sometimes it looks like mature. Sometimes it even looks disciplined. But strength and suppression are not the same thing to me. Being vulnerable or being strong, they're not the same thing. Suppressing your emotions and things that is not the same thing.
Right.
So the vulnerability side and the exposure of that vulnerability now leads us to gatekeeping, the emotional gatekeeping. And we frame it as self-protection, right? Oh, we don't need anybody to know anything. We say things like, oh, I'm a private person and I don't like to overshare. I keep my circle real small. Privacy is healthy, right?
Right.
Those are the kind of things we say in our mind. But research has shown almost 53% based on psychological magazines says that chronic emotional suppression, of course, is going to increase our stress markers in the body. Cortisol. We know that.
Yeah.
So the real question is, when does guarding our story become guarding your own growth?
That's a really good question. I love this because I literally was teaching about this last night, because the chronic stress that comes from suppressing your emotions, from ignoring them, from isolating yourself, it's similar to the person who is oversharing, but it's a protection strategy. It's a way to cope through it, right? But for those who are protecting and they're suppressing, it can affect their identity. Chronic stress actually will cause damage to your identity. So when you're not processing the emotions and you're holding them back, right, so that you can be strong through the situation and you can overcome, that is when I think you said scars, and I like to think scars are wounds. When they're not processed, or you don't have time to process them, they just manifest later. And we're knowing that a lot of dis-ease in our body, or disease in our body, is from this chronic stress that we've been holding on to because we are in protection mode. And so healing begins whether you are oversharing or not sharing at all when you stop performing your emotions and you stop
Right.
listening them and you actually start to process them in a useful way that's serving you so that you can overcome. Like our body is brilliant. It's not broken. And so when we use whatever protection mode gravitates to some of us, we're going to tell everybody what's going on with other people. You and I can hear a word, but we're going to have a nice smile on our face and we're not going to look like what we're going through, right? Whatever you're using, if you're not going through it and processing it, because the oversharer, they're not processing it either. They're just telling everyone about it. And the person who is holding it in is definitely not processing it. It's just going to manifest as a different way. And we're finding a lot of metabolic diseases, weight gain, chronic illnesses are coming from stress, because our body is not processing whatever the emotion is. So it's a mask either way. You either put the mask so that you can't see your face, or you put the mask that looks like a different face. But either way, masking the pain.
Either way, I feel like that too. You know, when it comes to performative vulnerability, there are some people who've gone in the total opposite direction. You know, they're choosing emotional minimalism instead. Culturally, we've seen both extremes. I have personally lived in both extremes myself.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you know, sometimes I want to share everything. And then there's sometimes I don't want to share anything. I think emotional discernment is where you are in the stage of that journey.
Yeah.
So based on that stage, you know, do you feel like the emotional expression on our socials or on our timeline are what it looks like in real life? Or is most of the things that we are seeing on our socials, the emotional, the vulnerability things, are things that have happened and we're sharing, or are they real time, real life happening?
Oh, that's a hard question. That's a really hard question. I feel like maturity is a factor in that.
Yes.
I feel like our youth, because they're used to seeing these emotions out front and out loud. And I think of my oldest, I love my girl, but she will come on her TikTok and cuss somebody out in a minute. Love my girl. She's feisty. But then for me, as an older woman, right, that's not necessarily what I'm going to do, right? I'm going to share about the horrible person that I experienced after the fact, right?
Okay.
Emotions, whether you're using them for gain or you're not experiencing them out of fear, you have to listen to yourself and be honest and compassionate. So I feel like the person that you're experiencing, because we've been, like you said, over a decade, I've seen it go from bloggers to influencers to creators. Like now we're creators, right? That's what we call ourselves. And when we were bloggers, we were very authentic and very real. It wasn't as curated as it is now. When it transitioned into influencer, it became curated, vulnerability and compassion. And now we're creators. So we're taking our life and our experiences and we're sharing it in a creative way, whatever you want to call it. I just think it depends on the person. I think it depends on the person that we're seeing. I think there's a lot of people that if you met them in real life, you would be amazed that because they're not that person. I would say I'm one of those people. Like I am what you see on social media, but I'm an introvert. Like for the most part, you know me.
Yes.
I'd much rather be on my couch with my book, chilling with my dog, not doing anything in my sweats, right? But I serve a public platform and I speak and I do events and I'm out there on stage and I have all the energy. I'm both people. But what you see is what you get with me. But there's some people that we've met in the industry that you're like, that is not the person that you get in real life. And so that I think it depends on the person, but there are a lot of people who are using the filter of a device, a camera, to express a person either that they really, really want to be in order to be liked or in order to be accepted, in order to be seen. And ultimately, whether you're holding in the emotions or you're oversharing it, you ultimately want to be seen. That's
That's ultimately, I think that's what all these platforms are for, is some form of visibility, right?
Yeah.
To be seen by something. I do want to touch on the one thing that you said, though, Dee. You said that, you operate in both spaces. You're an extrovert and you're an introvert.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I connect on that same space because we're an extrovert and introvert. And my introvert is a little different than yours. And for me, it's not necessarily curling up with a book or, for me, it's just being with myself and by myself and doing things alone, not
Mm-hmm.
requiring outside energies or other people to stimulate me for those desires. So when we consider the vulnerability, sometimes the strongest person in the room is oftentimes the most guarded person.
Absolutely.
Most definitely, right? When strength
Absolutely.
becomes their identity. But neurologically, unprocessed emotion, it doesn't disappear. It
No.
stores. It
Mm-hmm.
shows up in body, it shows up in tone, when we're tense. So how do we know when we're preserving a story for the right table versus avoiding vulnerability because we're introvert or whatever a part of our personality won't allow us to be publicly vulnerable in those spaces, won't allow us to showcase sitting on the couch, reading a book, won't allow us to showcase being okay with being by ourselves. You know what I'm saying? It's because
Yeah.
I don't feel like we do it on purpose, but somehow or another, we tend to showcase more of the extroverted side. And I know I can say for me, because I know that's what my eyes likes to see based
Yeah.
on my stats, my insights. When I show the other thing, of course, it's low engagement. But when I
Yeah.
show the exciting side of JQue and all that she's doing, and the exciting side of whether I'm crying excitedly on there or whether I'm just, sharing a little story or something, I just, how much of that is really our authentic selves and how much are we really opening ourselves up to emotional vulnerability?
For you, I know for you, it's all JQ. It is all JQ all the time, all day, both
All
sides.
day, whether I'm
Both
by
sides.
myself or whether I'm with somebody,
And
I'm
can
the
we
same
have
JQ.
both sides? I think because, and I, again, being in the industry for so long, when we had to start niching down,
Mm-hmm,
we had
mm-hmm.
to start making it, this is the only thing that we offer on social media. I fought it so much because I was like, I'm so much more than this. I'm so much
Right.
more than a gym rat. I'm so much more than, this strength training girl. And I've come to a place where I don't know if it's age, I don't care. I'm showing it all because, well, it's funny you say that. I'm not, because it depends on what account you follow.
Yep.
I have several accounts because we had to niche down. And so
Exactly.
society is telling us we only want to see the most exciting part of you.
Yes.
But a lot of us we're multifaceted. We're so much more than one side. So when you're talking about the emotional suppression, the things that we're not sharing, I feel like just because the camera didn't capture it doesn't mean we're not sharing it.
Oh, I love that, Dee, because you are so right. A lot of times it's the capture, it's
Mhm.
how we show it to consumers or how our audience sees it or the parts of it we show to them or that we allow them to see. I
Yeah.
think there's levels to the vulnerability. And one of the main things you said that sat well with me was maturity. That
Hmm.
comes, that's that discernment level.
Yeah.
Building that level
Yeah.
of discernment as, is this the one that I really need to share based on my audience and what I know I'm trying to get from them? Or is it something I'm sharing because I want to get something from them? I want to be seen in this vulnerability. Or is it a strategy?
Right.
Now, I'm raising my hand because everything I share to the public, no matter what platform, whether it's on Instagram or whether it's face to face, is always strategic for me. But that's
Mhm.
because I am super vulnerably guarded out of my introvertness,
Right. And
right?
I also think if we consider social media as a platform and not a person, then we respect that. There are some people that drama follows them.
Everything, drama,
They
drama.
they've got these stories, and there's other people who are curating it. But as far as strategy, I can see as a super producer, as a businesswoman, right? Um, Having to have some sort of in your face persona versus who you are all the time, because like JQue, you're a lot of energy, girl. You can't be that all the time.
I mean, all the time. No,
You gotta reserve it. You gotta
I
reserve it
do.
sometimes. And it's interesting too, because I've late have just been in a place where I don't want to put all like I just want to exist in this time, right? And so showing up in a place where I don't care if you like it or not, like I'm just gonna post it because I want to encourage people. I want them, and I've always been an encourager. That's how I'm designed to be. And so looking at the stats, but when you are in this world of media, you definitely have to, and I don't think that's changed. I'm sure, I mean, actors and actresses in the 1920s all the way to 2026, there is an on-camera persona and an
Yes.
off-camera persona, but
Yeah.
now people are taking their curated off-camera persona and just hyping it up a little bit more, because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for more experience, more I think I just saw like social media is turning to vulnerability and credibility and all those
Yep.
things like that. So they're like, okay, now we need to show when I cry, and it's like
Yep.
not the cute cry, like the snotty, nasty nose cry, right? Like that's the
Like a
cry.
real cry. Not
Yeah,
that you've gotten it out and you've cleaned yourself up and you
right.
got not that one. People are moving towards vulnerability.
Yeah. And is that real vulnerability though? It's
Right.
one of those things that you're like trying to incite yourself to a place where it's going to be a good camera shot.
I think that's where emotional stewardship comes in,
Mhm.
sharing with
Mhm.
discernment, right? If
Yeah.
and if vulnerability has now become performative and gatekeeping is now also become a form of isolation, then I think the real work somewhere lives like in the middle, not necessarily for exposure, but also not for suppression.
Yeah.
I feel like the trending aspect of vulnerability that can be used positively has to do with our emotional stewardship.
Yeah.
Has to do with, the idea that first of all the story is valuable, not because it's a trend, not because it converts to dollars or to followers, but because it carries the weight of influence, how you want to influence those people. And stewardship definitely has lots of different questions, like will it perform, is it ready, what how will it connect to my audience, has it even integrated, considering that therapists now talk about integration as a moment when difficult experiences become part of your narrative.
Mhm.
They they encourage integration due to our nervous system, and I'm thinking, what? But like you said, all of that, deciding when, how much, how often, what platform, how performative it's going to be, how much drama is going to be associated with it, that comes with maturity,
Yeah.
you know. And that kind of takes me back to wine. People always associate wine and how well it's going to taste based on its maturity, right? Wine
Mhm.
mirrors that beautifully. A bottle hasn't finished developing, and so it won't deliver the full body, the full expectation, the full experience, the full flavor of that bottle until it's completely developed.
Yeah.
And every bottle, every wine, every vineyard takes different times, different amounts, different environmental stimulants to develop and to mature. So I definitely think it's a lot of times our environment, where we are in the journey, what our expectations are, and if we're sharing vulnerability out of trying to catch a fish,
Mhm.
and knowing when and how is just as important part of the journey as to being mature in the journey.
Yeah, I agree. I think the healing will begins when you stop, like you said, performing your emotions. You stop imprisoning them, and it's not something that you use or you fear, but it's something that you can listen to with honesty and compassion. And stop pretending. Just be
Yeah.
in that truth. And when people are coming from a place of truth, that's authenticity. That's
Yeah.
real vulnerability. So if it's not curated, if it's like, yeah, this is really how I'm experiencing today, and this it's really hard. And I need somebody to hear me, and I'm not going to hold it back, but I'm also not going to hype it up so that it's more than what it is. Then that's a great place for healing, and that's also like a good glass of wine when it's ready to be opened, right?
Yeah.
um you'll have the best glass of wine. So I love that analogy, just thinking of it that way. And I think if we could teach this new influx of influencer, because it matters, what you're showing matters, people are watching, and it's influencing them, like you said. And if we could come from a place of not necessarily always wanting to be an influencer, but maybe an impacting
Ooh, I love that.
so that allowing them to heal in front of people, but in a way so similar to the power of the testimony, so that their truth can help somebody else on their story.
Ooh, D, that is so good. I think a lot of people don't necessarily understand discernment.
Mm-hmm.
And discernment is not even something we really teach in our culture. It's not something that you can go to a class for, you can get a college degree for. You know what I'm saying? I mean, discernment is one of those things that comes with maturity,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think also that emotional stewardship is just like that. Not
Mm-hmm.
everyone deserves the table. Not everyone deserves to drink out of the same a bottle. Your
Yeah.
audience deserves not every single chapter. You got to build that trust slowly. And first and foremost, you have to be safe with your emotional stewardship.
Yeah.
So when we talk about that emotional stewardship or that discernment, what do you feel like healthy vulnerability looks like, and how do we attain that?
When it's not from a place of panic or pretending.
Ooh,
That's
solid. That's
simple.
it. Period.
Yeah.
Not from a place of panic. Wow. Wow.
Because when you are suppressing, it's from panic, right?
Yes.
And when it's fake, you're pretending.
Of course, you're pretending. Wow.
It's just truth.
Do you feel like because now socially vulnerability is trending, that in the future it's going to be a part of the strategy as far as, marketing, media, because it's already going that way, right? But now when I sit down at a marketing meeting, is now telling my story going to be the check mark, like a part of what's going to get me in the door with my followers?
I absolutely do think that's going to be part of the story. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't necessarily, like I said, if it's coming from an authentic, real, not from a place of fear, not from a place of false scenarios,
Yeah.
I think it's really powerful because we come from our previous generation who suppressed all their emotions, did not have emotional intelligence, and did not know how to process it. So we have a generation that is coping with so many things that they weren't able to deal with. But if we're open and honest about our stories, letting everybody know that you have a story, first of all, it's an opportunity. I'm trying not to be super Christianese. Discipleship. It's an opportunity to help others grow in their walk, who can relate to you. So I think putting that on the table for a marketing manager wouldn't be a bad thing. It's just the intent of telling the story. Are we telling the story from a place that we want to create something that's not really there? Or are we telling a story so that we can help somebody, that one person who might be watching you, so that they can get through whatever they're getting through in their story?
Oh, that's good. I feel like what I'm hearing across the conversation is that, first of all, vulnerability is really not the problem. And then silence is also not the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But discernment is where the work goes.
Yeah.
Healthy living is not about exposure or secrecy. It's
Mm-hmm.
really about stewardship. It's
Yeah.
about knowing what to pour, what to preserve, what to process in private before it actually reaches the screen, or in the case of wine, the glass, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we started today simply by asking a question. It was a layered question, but has vulnerability become something sacred or something more strategic, right? And we explored how emotional transparency now lives inside visible economy, where stories circulate quickly and healing now becomes currency. We also unpacked tension between sharing scars versus sharing an open wound. Emotional gatekeeping is where privacy protects growth. It's when privacy isolates growth also. But strength sometimes masks that suppression. And ultimately, I feel like we really have to steward our emotions, understanding that your story carries weight, timing matters, integration matters, and discernment. Well, I feel like discernment is the healthy living part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so with all that we've talked about today, vulnerability for sale is really not an accusation for me. It's really it's an invitation. I challenge everybody who's watching today or tuning in to examine your intentions behind sharing your vulnerable stories.
Mm.
Challenge your intention behind sharing your testimony, because not every table, not every platform, not every aspect deserves to be shared. And not every audience deserves every single chapter. I feel like the vulnerable part and the sale part kind of just have to be separated.
Yeah.
Because I feel when we get into the emotional part, especially emotional entrepreneurship, when I'm managing my emotions towards profits,
Mm-hmm.
that discernment and that maturity and that marketing, there has to be a very, very, very close look and a very fine line.
Yeah. And I think that's where values and integrity come in. When you
Ooh,
know what your values are and you operate out of integrity, the line won't be crossed. And it'll be in a respectful way of sharing so that, again, you can help somebody, you can relate to somebody, they can relate to you, they can learn from you. Something I say when I work with the women in prison is that we take the lesson, we leave the story. And so we share stories so that we can learn a lesson from somebody's experience, but we keep the story where it is and we take the lesson with us. And so I think if when you're in a marketing place or space, if the story is so salacious that it's like, let me tell you what happened, that's when you might be crossing that line of selling, right? Versus offering or growing or gaining or impacting or influencing.
yeah, that's important. That's really deciding where you're going to share your story from, how you're going to share it is what's going to resonate more with your audience than having an ulterior motive versus sharing your story out of wanting someone to heal.
Or the plot line. Like
Yeah, the
I
plot
think a lot of
line.
people are just focused on let's get the plot line, let's get the worst part of the story
To
into
throw
people's
people,
faces.
right?
Yes, let's have them like, oh my, like what? And captivated by it. And let's focus on the full story,
Wow.
not just the parts that everyone wants to hear, but beginning to end.
I
Let's
love
keep
that.
the story.
No dramatizing the vulnerability for likes, shares, comments, or profits, right? More like in using emotional intelligence in order
Yeah.
to heal, and not just heal yourself, but also as a testimony to heal someone else, for to connect with someone authentically. So whatever it is that you have to share or the impact that you are trying to make is more authentic, more true, and more emotionally valuable. That's
Yes.
so good.
Yeah.
Well, D, you know what? It's a wrap, honey. We have done it today. Thank
Yes.
you guys so much for tuning in today. We've had so many layers and layers in this conversation today. And I authentically think that, again, vulnerability is not an accusation, but it's definitely an invitation for us to examine our intention. As
Agree.
always, folks, please remember to stay connected to Healthy Living and Wine. If something here resonated with you today, please like, share, and comment. I love hearing your feedback Upcoming conversations are curated experiences and collaborative moments. So please be sure to follow along with us on Instagram and Facebook. Um, to our Healthy Living and Wine audience, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for continuing to show up, to lean into our conversations that stretch you, and for choosing reflection over reaction because your presence matters. And Dee, thank you so much for joining me today. Listen, you sitting at the table, bringing honesty, depth, perception into this conversation. I appreciate the way you think through these layers and the way you hold space for the nuance. Thank you so much for being such a great friend and sharing this platform of vulnerability with me. Is there anything that you'd like to leave our consumers or their audience today? And don't forget to share where they can follow and like you at.
Yes, well, first of all, I want to thank you for the invitation, JQue. Wherever you invite me, I'm going. And I would just say that, like, when truth leads, it's never going to be a bad ending. And so make sure that you're leading from truth. You're not pretending, you're not panicking. You're just offering an opportunity for others to grow. And you can follow me on these social media streets. I am dbolton_ on Instagram. And yeah, dbolton.com if you're looking for my website. And thank you again for having me. It's always a pleasure and a delight.
Always. Listen, if this episode resonated with you, like, share, and comment with someone who needs a conversation. Your thoughts matter to me. And be encouraged that healthy living and wine can coexist beautifully when balance, intention, and moderation are part of the pour. So let's raise our glasses, Dee, so we can get up out of here. Let's toast out of here to discernment, to maturity, and to knowing what to pour and what to preserve to another. Cheers. And thanks for listening.